Before we get into it today, I want to put out an open invitation for anyone who wants to come and debate any of the topics we speak about here. Specifically, if you disagree and you feel I've said the wrong thing, I love debating. I'd be very open to hear differing opinions on any topic. Anybody is welcome to come, and I look forward to your responses. Something that I really have always liked about Donald Trump is that through his crass and unpolished way of doing things, he's often able to expose something true that otherwise would never have been exposed in the classic political politeness that we have. For example, in regards to NATO is a grift. It's a very strange situation. You have America spending most of the money for the defense of Europe, billions more. And even though there are NATO obligations on how much to spend as GDP, the countries just were not filling it. And so Trump thinks he's so smart and smarter than everyone else, and he was like, hey, why is America paying all this money? It's almost like a mob, like the son of like a mob boss inherits, the family business. And he's like, hey, what's going on here? We claim to be providing protection for these people, but they're not getting that much protection. What's going on? What am I missing? And all the other big Italians in the room are like, this is, looking to judge like, yeah, this is the game. We don't actually provide, we just take people's money. And it's like, and you're not supposed to speak that out. So the NATO has been a gift to the military industrial complex and weapons manufacturers. And that is the reason why that grift goes on. But Trump, because he thinks he's so smart and so good and so crass, he was able to just expose this. And now all those kind of countries are paying their fair share. Now we're gonna talk a lot about NATO on this podcast. But this is just the way Trump is able to expose things. And this first week of his presidency has been remarkable at exposing another amazing fact about government. And that is that whether you agree with Trump's policies or whether you don't, it turns out it's just that easy to get things done. Government will always tell you, we need to research the issue, we're looking into that, and we're going to make a committee, and then that committee will make another committee, and then we'll look into that committee, and then we'll decide to review in another committee, and then we'll come up with some recommendations, and we'll do some small thing to make it look like we're solving the problem. Trump came into office, and he said, we promised to do something, and we're going to do it. We promised to arrest criminals who came into this country and committed crimes here, and we promised to deport them. We ran on that, and we're just going to do it. And he has presidential authority to do it, and he's just going to do it. Whether you agree with the policy or not, and something we're going to speak about at the end, but he just did it. And so whenever you hear government saying, well, we can't do that, we have to research, we need more money, it's mostly a lie. It's mostly because they don't want to solve the problem. They prefer to keep the problem. What's another good example of this? So a few months ago, maybe it was a year ago, Xi Jinping visited San Francisco. San Francisco is a completely lawless city. I have a coworker who was comforting a friend that had visited San Francisco, whose car had been broken into because he had left it open and everything was stolen. And he said to him, don't worry, had you not left the car open, the only difference would have been that the windows would have been smashed. There's open drug use, there's people living on the streets, there is graffiti everywhere, and major cities all over the US have these problems. Now, as a libertarian, I think the government should be severely restricted in what type of laws it enforces. But I do believe that if the primary role of the state is safety and law and order, and it is not wrong for a government that seizes tax dollars and that makes public spaces to police those public spaces. And if they can clean up all the people when ping arrives, and they can clean up all the graffiti, and they can clean up the homelessness, then they can do it every day. And they can easily enforce it like they do in many cities, that you cannot sleep on the streets, that you cannot do drugs, that you cannot do these things. And you cannot cross our border without any consequences. You cannot just come in. It's one thing to say that America should have a better immigration system. Immigration system is highly flawed. But the idea that government can just decide to not fulfill its responsibility because it doesn't want to is not appropriate. The executive branch of the government is there to uphold the law. And if people do not like the law, then the remedy is to get Congress to pass different laws. But a border that is completely lawless is not okay. Libertarians believe in private property, but that's not what the state believes in. The state believes in public property, and if you have public property, then the job of the state is to protect that public property for the use of its citizens, and to keep it maintained in a way that everyone can use it equally, and to allow lawlessness on the streets of America and to allow lawlessness at the border is only because government prefers not to solve the problem, and that's a major revelation that people should not take lightly. If you look at the amount of money that is spent in many cities in this country to support the homelessness and to solve problems, what you'll see is that they prefer to perpetuate the problem, because perpetuating the problem allows them to continually run it, allow them to pretend to have compassion, and allows them to continue to make tons of money off the backs of taxpayers without ever solving a problem. And the reason for this is that government really has, for the most part, inverted incentives. Let me explain what that means. I constantly see this pattern where government will say where somebody will say, "How come our schools are failing? How come our kids are not doing well in math and reading?" And they'll say, "Well, we need more money." And government will say, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to give you that more money." And they'll say, "Look, we invested another $100 billion in education, so we support education." And another party that doesn't want to give more money to education, well, they must not be supporting education. And this is nonsense, because money does not turn into results. If money turned into results, then every big company would be producing the greatest technology in the world. Why in the world would there ever be acquisitions? No, solving a problem. You need resources to solve a problem. But obviously the problem in our education system is that Randy Weingarten and the rest of the teachers unions have no interest in educating kids. They are corrupt monsters interested in benefiting themselves. And if you don't deal with that, then just constantly sending more money to something is never going to work. I saw Justin Trudeau from Canada. He said, in response to Trump's tariff threat, "We're going to spend another $50 billion at the border." But I'm not interested in $50 billion. I don't care. Why would anyone care about a number? I want to know what you're going to do at the border. I want to know what you're going to do to stop lawlessness. And so government just prefers to throw money at something. And what Trump did this week, which is so amazing, is he just said, "No, I'm the chief executive, and I have a responsibility to do these things, and I'm just going to do them." And he just did it. Now, let's clarify executive authority, because over the last few presidencies, it's been abused in a way that was never intended by the Constitution. The Constitution does not intend a president to not enforce laws and to push his own progressive agenda. But to be sure, every action taken by the executive is an executive action. The president is the CEO of the corporation that is the federal government. There is no such thing as co-equal branches of government. All the power of the U.S. government exists in the legislature, the Senate and the House. The co-equal branches is some nonsense made up by Wilson, who was one of the worst presidents to ever live, and a progressive nutjob. This idea of the expert class, and he wanted to increase the power of the presidency, and he believed in experts running the show. You can look into Wilson, terrible guy, got us into World War I, really one of the worst presidents, and really put this poison into the political culture to sing as co-equal branches. The president is hired by the American people, sent by the states, in order to carry out the laws and keep the federal government going. Is not a co-equal branch. And his job is to execute the work of the federal government, and part of that is to follow the law. And so these executive actions are good. These executive actions send a message that America is not a lawless place. America has rules, has borders, and we're going to get into what I think good we're going to ought to be. But one thing is clear, that if government is not fulfilling its role, it's not because it doesn't have enough money. There's plenty of money. Every one of the states take way too much taxes. The federal government is way too bloated. They have plenty of money to do things. What they lack is the will. And what President Trump showed us is that they are able to do it. Now I want to speak about some of the lawlessness in our society and the immigration policy of the previous administration. And sometimes you will hear this term, a bleeding heart liberal. They're just so compassionate. You see people like Selena Gomez crying and weeping because people are being deported. I want to address the fact that lawlessness is cruelty, and cruelty, the worst type of cruelty, and the cruelty for everyone involved. When you have an administration not following the law, what you create is massive uncertainty. Many of the people that are being dragged away now to be deported are criminals. But there are plenty of people who just came to this country and wanted a better life, and they saw the previous administration was going to be lax, and they thought that would be the policy going on, and they took advice of people that brought them into this country. And now their dreams are going to be shattered, and they're going to be taken back to their country of origin. There are people that have been abused by smugglers being brought into this country. People have died at the border. Lawlessness is cruelty. When you don't have clear guidelines and you don't live by the rule of law, it's cruelty. It destroys the lives of everyone involved. And now people across the United States are living in fear, and that is the fault of the previous administration that did not make clear guidelines and created this fantasy that America was going to perpetually take as many people that want to walk in undocumented into the country. And so that is the greatest uncertainty from government. Just tyranny is cruelty. Another example of this is what you see on the streets of major cities: the crime, the homelessness, the inability to prosecute violent criminals that you see in New York. Who is that a favor to? What you are doing is that you are saying, because I have some progressive ideal, I'm not going to be cruel to everyone involved. Whenever I've seen videos of kids getting off school buses in San Francisco and they have to walk past drug addicts, it is not compassionate to make children step on needles on the way home. It is not compassionate to have mothers and children and productive people having to cross the street because entire city blocks are taken over by tent cities. Cruelty to allow people to remain like that and not to set standards. Not to say to a drug addict, we have programs, we can get you the help you need. We have a step like they have in Europe, in many countries where they start you off in a dorm and you can progress. If you can get a job, they have rules, responsibilities, but they must uphold the law. It is not appropriate to have lawlessness because then everybody suffers. And even as a libertarian, I believe that is the absolute responsibility of the state, as long as it has the monopoly on violence and it doesn't allow private property in the way I would imagine, and it's something we're going to get into, but that they have the basic responsibility before they do anything else to uphold laws and to make cities clean. And what we saw this week is that they can totally do that. And the reason why they don't do that is because they're either incompetent or stupid. Another example, let's say, recent example from the LA fires. So there was a huge reservoir that was empty, and it would have cost $80,000 to fix it, and it broke a year ago. And it just wasn't the priority of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, because these people do not want to do the job that they are hired to do. They don't want to be executives. They don't want to run around talking about compassion and how we have to do this and we have to do that. And that's fine. Gavin Newsom, start a podcast and talk about how you want to protect the rights of people that want to mutilate children and murder their babies in the uterus. You have the free speech rights to do that. But when you are the governor of California, your job is to keep the lights on, to keep the laws enforced, to make sure the houses don't burn. Another form of cruelty is regulations. Whilst we're on that topic, the reason why there are so many people that lost their insurance in California is because California overregulated their market. And so the government of California says it's so unfair that people have to pay so much for fire insurance. So we're going to cap it. We're going to artificially cap it. And that sounds so nice. Now everyone's going to save on their fire insurance because they're precluded from charging too much. And what actually happens is that the price of insuring that house becomes more than the allowed premiums. So the company will have to cancel it. So now you end up with no protection. So government will say, we passed a protection act. This protection act protects people from being ripped off. It ends up doing the opposite. So I want to talk about what I think is the correct immigration policy for America, from the perspective of what is good for this country. There was a really interesting thing back and forth between the president of Colombia and Trump about him forcing them to take flights, and they didn't want to take flights. It was a very strange reaction from the Colombian president. And there does seem to be some animosity towards America. And I think sometimes Americans are like a little bit, hey, why do they hate us so much? What do they do that for? Why do so many countries have a gripe with America? Now, to be sure, I believe that Trump's action was correct in this instance. Colombia has a responsibility to its citizens. It has a responsibility to take them back, and it doesn't matter what aircraft they arrive on. However, America's involvement in South America has been shameful. A lot of South American countries in the 20th century leaned socialist, and the policy of America was to constantly combat socialism at any cost. And this was a tremendous failure. It caused many autocratic dictators to be propped up in Honduras and Colombia and I think Nicaragua and Peru, all in the name of fighting socialism. Created major disruption in many of these countries. And if we wonder why there are so many people seeking asylum from these countries or trying to get a better life, it's because America's foreign policy has played a major role in wrecking these countries. Similar to the crisis coming, of Syrian refugees into Europe a few years ago. Sure, Europe has a responsibility to protect the cultural integrity of its country. But there is responsibility in the fact that Europe and America destroyed that country, supported rebels, didn't have a good end game, and perpetuated a civil war which left many innocent people with nowhere to go, and a major migrant crisis. And there are ramifications to messing around the world. Right now we have sanctions on Venezuela. We've destroyed their economy. We have an embargo on Cuba for decades, since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I haven't heard any explanation why. Why would trading with Cuba make America less safe? Why would buying Venezuelan oil make America less safe? Surely it's not our responsibility to tell the Venezuelans which government they have. Why do we think, and surely we've learned the lesson over the past 20 years that democracy cannot be spread with the barrel of an M16. If that were the case, the whole world would be democratic. And we have to understand the limitations of our power, and we also have to understand that peace through strength means using our strength correctly, using our strength where it's appropriate. And it is appropriate to send our military to guard our border, because that is the role of our military. It is not appropriate to hypothetically decide that Iraq would be better off without Saddam Hussein, creating some false intelligence about a connection to Al-Qaeda and changing regimes. It is not appropriate for our government to be occupying parts of the world that only anger the locals and appear to have no benefit except for benefiting weapons contractors. And when America does use its power, Congress is supposed to have oversight of that. I remember during Trump's first term, there was this crazy moment where Trump was maybe mean to the wife of a fallen serviceman, and did he speak to her correctly, not correctly? There was a whole discussion about that, and it came out that these soldiers were in Niger, and nobody was questioning when did America declare war on Niger. When did Congress authorize the ability for U.S. troops to be sent to Niger? I don't want U.S. troops sent to Niger. I want U.S. troops guarding my border. I want U.S. troops saying that if you mess with American interests, you're going to be slapped back. But I don't want America bullying everyone around the world. And so even though I liked what Trump did with the Colombian president, and I liked that he pushed him to accept the flights, I only want that power to be exercised when it's appropriate. And we must not get drunk on power because that leads us down the road of war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the like, and we want to avoid that. The question is, what would be a good immigration policy for America to have? What would be the right immigration policy? So it is my view that population growth is never a bad thing. If you look in human history, people are always talking about how overpopulation is going to cause all these terrible problems. It never ever happens. The more people, the wealthier humanity is. You see this clearly, even though the population has skyrocketed, but child mortality rate and poverty around the world has fallen. Freedom and the free market and needs people to get things done. And I don't have a problem with immigration as long as it's lawful and as long as it's documented and as long as the people that are coming here are productive. I myself am an immigrant. I don't have a problem with immigration. I think what America has to clean up what's going on right now and has to create a sense that America follows its laws. But I think going forward, America has to have a policy that says if you want to come here and you want to work here, you will be under the same jurisdiction as everyone else. You will not be cheap labor. You will come if there's a need for you. It is easy to apply for a work visa as long as you submit your documents and as long as you clearly register to be here. And after many years, if you are a productive person and you haven't taken any money, of course I'm against welfare in general. I don't believe it's the responsibility of government to seize money from their citizens to distribute it. But certainly, if someone's coming here at the beginning, they ought not to receive any public funding. What went on in New York over the summer is totally insane. How people were just coming in and they would be given meal vouchers and places to stay. It is not the job of people of New York taxpayers to fund this. They never voted on this. It is not compassionate for the government to seize money from people and fill up gyms that were supposed to be with public schools with migrants. It is not appropriate. It is totally a dereliction of duty. It is not within their power. People did not vote on that. You cannot take funds away from things to give it to people who never paid into that. It is wrong, and stealing money in order to fulfill your idea of compassion is in fact cruelty. What I would like to see in this country is an immigration system that makes sense, where we value people coming in here, people that want to be productive, people that want to fulfill the American dream. The more people, the better. It has to be done. It has to be done in a way that makes sense. But we want people here that are productive, that are working, that are increasing the economy. That is better for everyone. We need more skilled workers in this country, not less. There is certainly no surplus of productive people. And if people can come here and show that they want to work hard, they can come and it'll be better for everyone. All right, I have a small segment that I'm going to start doing, and this is libertarian issues that other people find ridiculous. And in this segment, I'm going to try convince you that maybe some of these libertarian causes are not as crazy as you may think. Let's start with the case of Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht, if you don't remember, was the creator of the Silk Road. The Silk Road was a website on the dark web, which was created to facilitate commerce between people without the need to without the requirement of trust. So you would not need to rely on the banking system. The way it would work is like this. When someone bought from someone on the site, the money would go into escrow, and both parties would have to sign off, and then the money would be transferred. And if both parties did not sign off, there was binding arbitration on the website. That is the way the website did business. Now, it is 100% true that most of the commerce, maybe all of the commerce on that website was illegal. People used the website to sell lots and lots of drugs. Now, you might be of the opinion that selling drugs is evil. It causes the death of people, causes addiction, and you might say that it should be illegal. Ross Ulbricht was sentenced to 2 life sentences for creating a website. His charges were distribution of drugs and the like, and in America they can make counts out of thin air, but he was given 2 life sentences for making a website. He did not distribute drugs. Now you can claim that his website shouldn't have existed and his website was bad. You can claim all of these things, but I challenge you to claim that it is not lawlessness from the government side to say we don't like something someone did, we don't like that they skirted around the banking system, we don't like that they created a place for people to do things that are illegal, and therefore we're going to throw the book at them. And that is why it was an appropriate use of the pardon power, because the pardon power is supposed to address these type of things. What the pardon power is not meant for is obviously to pardon violent criminals like some of the January 6s, and the pardon power is certainly not meant for giving pre-pardons to crimes that we don't exist. Biden is so prophetic and so knowledgeable that he knows that Fauci and his whole family did not break the law between 2014 and 2024. He knows all those cases, and he felt strong enough, and he just knew that they had to be pardoned. That is a complete disgrace. That is a complete misuse of the pardon power, to the point where I think the pardon power should be reformed so that the president cannot use it after an election that they lost, meaning in a lame duck presidency. I don't know how you would do that, but I think that would mitigate the problem immensely. But at the end of the day, Ross Ulbricht was sent to prison for life. All of his which being prison is being like an animal, caged up in a maximum security prison because he made a website, and that is the wrong use of the criminal justice system. In a similar way, how Al Capone, the notorious gangster from Chicago, was sent to Alcatraz for tax evasion. You cannot go after the man, like Yosef Wiener pointed out. My legal expert pointed out that if you do that, you end up circumventing all of law. You end up saying that I decide that somebody's guilty, and I decide what they're guilty of, and then I just bring different charges on them, and then I just give them the sentence that I wanted for the crime that I can prove. That is not a way a justice system is supposed to act. And so what we had now under many progressive governments is what libertarian commentator Dave Smith coined anarcho tyranny. Meaning, libertarians often talk about anarcho-capitalism, where we'll say that the anarchy just means that you should be free to do whatever you want. But what has happened in many cities in America is you have the opposite. You have anarcho-tyranny, where the government will come down hard on you on any of their pet projects. If you, God forbid, feed the homeless without documents or license, or you cut someone's hair without a license, well, they'll arrest you and fine you. But if you sit in the streets and injecting heroin, they don't have an opinion on that. And so the whole justice system is being used in the opposite way it was intended. And so we should come down heavily on violent crimes. We should come down on crimes that are clearly in the public interest, and we should never allow the justice system to be used to push agendas by having sentences on people that are totally not appropriate to make a point. The judge cannot use jail as a way to scare other people into not doing crimes that the person being jailed for wasn't jailed for in the first place. A person making a website does not deserve to go to jail for life. Anyway, that's our segment on lawfare. Again, if anybody wants to come and debate any of these points, if anyone wants to message me about something I made a mistake on, or wants to challenge me, I will guarantee to read it out on the podcast. I will address the questions, and if you want to remain anonymous, you can remain anonymous. If you want to come on, if you want me to mention you, I will mention you. Whatever you want, we'll make it happen. And this is open forum. Thank you for listening.